I am your host, Carrie, giving us different perspectives on where we are and where we want to go on our journey. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to spending some time with you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of the FoundHer Series. I am thrilled to be doing a whole series on the authors of our beautiful new book that is now out, because by the time you're listening to this podcast, it will be out on Amazon for people to buy. It's called Beautiful Chaos, Embracing the Unexpected. And I have the beautiful Tisa Sylvester coming in. Thank you, Tisa, for being here and for contributing to the beautiful chapter that you brought into the book. It's filled with so many incredible women and their stories. And I just appreciate that you said yes to the experience. But after I read your chapter, I'm like, well, yeah, you would have said yes, because that's what you do. You find something you might be a little bit uncomfortable with and you dive in. That's very proven in your chapter. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
And I would love to know the name of your chapter, and we'll talk a little bit about what made you say yes, the timing of it, and then we're going to go into your story a little bit to give the viewers and the listeners a bit more insight into what you were thinking about when you wrote it, and the main message that you wanted to get across. So what do you have for? You came up with that title yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have that title in mind and then knew what you were going to write about after, or did it come to you during?
No, it came during as one of the pivotal moments of change when somebody asked me. So,
and had you ever actually, because I know that a lot of the women that came in here, we all had the same intention of really sharing our story in the hopes of helping somebody. Like if somebody reads your story and can get something from it that can either help them or help them take the next step or whatever that is. Had you ever thought about sharing your story before? I think you mentioned like some people were like, you could write a book. But when did that actually come to fruition for you that you were like, okay, now's the right time for me to share my story?
honestly, it was the opportunity that came up when I saw a friend had co-authored the first volume, and it seemed like a good time to jump in and talk, because I had a personal someone I could talk to and see if it was right for me, and it sounded like it was a good opportunity. So that was the main part of the timing.
Yeah. And then had you ever actually written out like you've done? Like so many of us this was kind of the first time we'd actually put our story on paper. What was that process like for you to kind of lay it all out and then decide which pieces were the ones that you thought were going to make the best flow, I guess? Like what was that process like for you? I know for me it was quite difficult. It was like, oh, I didn't know how much to put in, what to take out, how much detail to go into. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that, because you've got a lot in your chapter. Like you were able to share so much with us, but in such a great way that they all just you needed that piece before this piece, and that like you did an amazing job. I guess is what I would like to say.
So yes, I had started to write it out at one point, and kind of kept adding on, and it was really disjointed. And then I kept going back to it and changing it, and a lot of it was reviewing the message. And so having somebody to bounce that off of, like talking to the editor, it was like I wanted to really more focus on like hardiness and resilience and what that looks like, and how it comes to fruition. So it took a lot of why am I saying this, and then writing why.
And I know that at the beginning, the editor Michelle, when she came in and she said, we need to write it from the perspective of, or how did she word that? It was like, think about the reader when we're writing it. And that helped me kind of go back and tweak some of the things when I was trying to come at it from, okay, for the reader to read these words, how is it going to make the most sense to them? Because we know our story. It makes sense to us because we know it, we live it, that's who we are.
Exactly.
And so that was a lot of refining for you then to go back through But the editor did help you with that, right?
Yes.
Hmm. And did
Yeah.
you have, because I know that some people did and some didn't. Some people sent it to friends to read before. Did you do that, or did you kind of keep it close to yourself
I
and
did
the
not.
editor? You didn't.
I
Yeah.
didn't send it to anybody
Yeah.
until it was done.
Yeah. And how, so there's so many different feelings of the authors that I've been talking to. Some are really nervous for that date to come out. I know it'll have been out, but by the time we um, air this, but what are your feelings around it? Are you just like, okay, I'm relieved, I'm happy, I'm glad I did it, so kind of check it off your bucket list? Or do you feel like you have more writing in you now because of going through this process? Where are you at there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like all of the feels came through the writing process.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the point of release, um, it doesn't really feel too different. It's not anything, I don't know. I don't know how to word it. I mean, it's a neat thing to have done, I
Yeah.
think. And
Mm-hmm.
I do really feel like it was more of a therapeutic process
Mm-hmm.
for me just to write it and figure out where I am with everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so as far as having other people read it, I mean, do I hope that somebody can read it and be like, "Oh, that's inspiring," and I
Mm-hmm.
can do things? Great, that would be
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. But
Mm-hmm.
I
But
don't.
for the most part, you did it for you. You did it for
Yeah,
you. Yeah,
yeah,
and I love that. I the other thing I wanted to touch on was, because when we write our story, there's usually other people involved, obviously, right? We're never in it just by ourselves. And you talk about an incident or something that happened when you were very young. I mean, 4 years old was really, I mean, I resonated with that, just that feeling of embarrassment and shame that you talk a little bit about in your chapter at the beginning. But I like how you did need to tie that in, because that started your kind of the belonging piece, right? Like where you got the nickname Mouse for
yeah.
kind of always standing in the corner and not really using your voice. And sometimes we need to know where that came from. So you touched on that a little bit, but you didn't make it, that wasn't your whole story. It was just a
No,
small piece that helped you understand why you were the way you were, and why
yeah,
some of the decisions you made were based from that. And I think it's a really important piece, because most of us have something that's made
mhm.
us who we are. And sometimes just tying that back around really helps. It helps the reader, because it helped me when I was reading your chapter. I really enjoyed reading your chapter, and that piece just helped me tie it back in. And just the way you described yourself, and you quit school in grade 9, and that was from a guidance counselor that said high school isn't for everybody. And
Yeah,
did that give you like a sense of relief, like, oh, thank God, because I don't feel like I fit in here? And
totally. There's like
that,
yeah, it's
and
like great. I'm out.
yeah, and you did, and you were out. And then, but even in that, then you go and you're working at the pizza place. But you found growth there too. You seem to find a way to grow in every situation that you're in, which I think is fantastic. Like, and you recognize it, you're aware of that. Even when you were in that, you were managing, you were always pushing yourself, you were pushing your people, you
Yeah,
were rewarding them, and that came out of your own pocket sometimes, just to get the best out of the people. And then it took somebody coming in, a customer coming in, and it was kind of that question of, like, now what? Like, what are you working on now? You're not staying here. And it made you kind of question, like, oh, is there more than this? Because you were feeling pretty good. You were supporting
yeah,
yourself. You had a home. Like, I mean, that was huge, and you might have been okay staying there until your
yeah,
eyes got open to. Well, I'll let you answer that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to answer to yourself. And him asking me that, I was like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, there's other things, but they're not for me.
Right.
but maybe
And that's something that you just never envisioned yourself doing, right? You didn't have those, like, those ideas of a different life. You were happy because you were safe, you were supporting yourself, you were independent. I mean, that's huge in itself. Comfortable, yeah, yeah. And I mean that, and you were doing that at a very young age. So, I mean, it sounded like to me from your chapters, you grew up very quickly in the
yeah.
situation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And having to support yourself very early on. But it took one person coming in and just planting a seed that made you go, huh, maybe there is more. Maybe there is something else. And then, I mean, I like so many things that you touched on in there, but, and then there was that sign that you drove by. It was like, register here.
Oh, yeah.
Explain that a little. Yeah. Help me with that one.
Yeah, I was driving down the road and there was a sign on this school, which I didn't know was a school at the time, but it said, graduate today, come in, ask us how. And I was early for whatever I was going to. And I thought, well, I'll just go ask, I guess.
What does it
Like,
hurt? Yeah.
yeah. And then it was like, well, it was the opportunity was there right now. Like they were like, write this test right now, do an assessment test. They wouldn't let me walk out the door without it. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. And then
Unreal.
that's the next cascade of moving on to higher education.
Yeah. And graduating with honors.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of, where are we sending your application letters? And you're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you at that point were really happy that you graduated with honors. Like that was something that was
Huge. Yeah.
obviously became important to you, even though you may not have realized how important it was at the time, right?
Yeah. And there was a bit of a, I don't know if I can't remember if I wrote it or not, but there was a bit of a personal touch in there too, because the principal of that school ended up, he was the principal of my high school originally. So he knew who I
Oh,
was. And so
okay.
when he pulled me in, he was like, okay, like now what? Right.
Wow.
So, because he was like, you finally came back and did this. What are you going to do now?
Yep. What's next?
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
And
So that,
and then that started the whole thing about going into the nursing program.
yeah. Yeah.
And even then, so it seemed like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the way I took that in when I was reading your chapter, it was like every time you got uncomfortable and put yourself in these situations that you didn't feel like you belonged in there. You questioned it. It was just like this feeling of inadequacy that you describe that really has been with you your entire life until you finally get to the point where you've built that confidence in knowing that you're good at what you do. Do you still have moments of that, or do you think you are like, okay, well, we're not going there anymore, like we're done that? You've proven enough to yourself that you
No, it is
belong
funny.
in these situations.
No, it's still there, it
It
doesn't
is.
ever really go, but it's more of a driving force than a run away from
Yeah.
thing now. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you get into the next level of training. You like, I'm just finishing my advanced critical care nurse right now. And
Oh,
I
wow.
noticed that my instructor is also the person who designed the program, who's also written textbooks and all these things. So every time I write a test, I feel like, oh, I got to be at her level. And you just got to put yourself back like, no, I'm the learner and she
Right.
expects me to be where I'm at. But I do have that feeling of inadequacy, imposter. Like, how did I get into this course? There's so much, information,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's still there. It's
It's
always there.
still there. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like you said, you're using that to your strength now, maybe on
Yes.
some of those times where it drives you more than it holds you back,
Yeah.
which is incredible. If we could all learn to do that, whatever that is, that weakness, that self-talk that comes and tries to kind of beat us up a little bit, if we can turn that around to really, um, be a motivating force behind us. I mean, that's massive. And you've had a lifetime of that.
Yeah.
And the ups and downs in your story just I mean, if for you to read that over and over, it's just so much evidence for you and proof for you that what you set your mind to is possible because you proved it. You proved it time and time and time again. I have maybe it's the last question. I don't know, but so the person that came in, your regular client in the pizza shop,
Mhm.
have you? Does that person know what trajectory you went on with him? I mean, you felt like he believed in you, right? It was one of those like somebody saw something in you. It was like, you're meant for more. What are you doing? Did you ever go back to him? Does he ever know
No, there would be no way
to
to
know
find
who
them.
that was or to
Unless we ordering pizzas on Friday nights and I was there making them. That would be all.
I just think it would be what a neat roundabout way of going back and I don't know if you thank them. I don't know what you do, but I just think but there's something really special about that because I think none of us know the conversations that we have with people and the ripple
Absolutely.
effect that that can make just by one person seeing something in you that you might not have been able to see at that time and the difference that it made in your life really from where you took off from that
Yeah.
question. Like I just
Worth it or wasn't. Yeah.
fascinating to me. And sometimes we get the opportunity to go back to them and sometimes we don't. But you hope somewhere down the line that is like you did make a difference in my life. And I hope, I mean, that would be a message I would love for anybody to take away is if somebody has done that for you, take the opportunity to tell them because what a gift that would be as
Mhm.
well. And we don't know why we do the things that we do and where it's going to lead us, but you certainly had trust and followed your gut, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You did.
It's nice, when somebody asks you a simple question like that, even just to know that they're thinking about you beyond the surface level of the, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
Good. It's like,
Yeah.
well, now what are you thinking about my life for?
Yeah.
So,
That somebody had an interest
yeah.
in they just saw what you were capable of and what you did. So your kids, do they know all of this story or are they going to read the chapter? How does that work for you?
Not adverse to letting them read it. They
Mhm.
know parts of the story,
Yeah.
and the reason why they know a good deal of it actually is because uh, I ended up married to one of the pizza drivers, and
Oh,
his best friend, who he had traveled the world with biking,
yeah.
a house right next door to us, so we share a fence with them, and he was also one of the pizza drivers.
Oh,
So
small world. So
yeah,
he knows
so
the story. He knows your story.
the kids know all about all the people like from the pizza shop, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
Oh,
we met
that's
you years ago.
oh,
Yeah,
that's very cool. I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much for using your voice. What sounds like that you're doing a lot more, and the good
yeah,
that you're the difference that you're making in the world by the profession that you chose. I mean, my goodness, if there that is such an honorable position that you're in, the good that you give back to all of us and the people in your community that you're helping and that you continue to. So you're yeah, I think it's an honor to have you in this book. I am so glad that you said yes, and I believe it's going to make a difference for the people that read the book. So, Tisa, thank you so much, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see this in people's hands. It's just it's a great feeling to know that we used our voice for the good, and maybe it'll make a difference, even if it's one person. That's all we've all said is our intention is getting it out there. If it helps one person, then it was a success. And
yeah,
just the fact that you did it is a success because when we can check something off our list that means something to us, then it was worth it no matter what happens. So Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And hopefully people reach out. I know that all of us have our handles or how people can get a hold of us if they have any questions or have any comments about the book or what they took away from it. So I'm looking forward to that as well. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tisa, for being here. And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching wherever you're at. And we will see you next time on the FoundHer Series. Thanks.